Evening, everyone, and congratulations to our honorees. And it's wonderful to be here, seated at this virtual table, some of whom are being honored tonight with my colleagues on the municipal and the state level. You know, we find ourselves in an unprecedented moment. There is unprecedented hurt, and it really does demand and require of all of us unprecedented community. And despite these unprecedented hurts, I have been continually inspired and fortified by the collective care and the mutual aid that we have seen in the last 8 months. And we need to keep that going, you know, once we've weathered this pandemic and beyond. And so tonight it is my honor to be able to sit at this virtual table with you, to be in community. And of course, congratulations to the Allston Brighton CDC on your 40th anniversary. That is certainly a milestone of an achievement. And we know that the most effective nonprofits, you know, funny story, I had a colleague visiting from somewhere else, and they said, you know, it often feels like in most places, in most districts, that the business community really runs the district. But in your district, it seems that the nonprofits run the district. And so I'm proud to say that we have some extraordinary pace-setting nonprofits in the Massachusetts 7th, and the Allston Brighton CDC is chief amongst them. And the reason why you're effective is because you are so rooted in community. And so I want to thank the ABCDC for being a champion for the Allston Brighton communities. I've had the privilege for a long time of knowing your good work and being a partner, you know, first in my capacity as an at-large counselor, and now the humbling honor as your Congresswoman, you know, to be a partner working closely with you to help create and preserve safe, clean, and affordable housing. I was so fortunate to be appointed to the Financial Services Committee. I serve on 2 committees and many subcommittees I don't need to enumerate here, but oversight and reform, which under this administration has kept me very busy, and certainly the Financial Services Committee under the leadership of Chairwoman Maxine Waters. And I wanted to serve on that committee so much because the Massachusetts 7th is one of the most diverse, dynamic, and vibrant districts in the country. It is also one of the most unequal. And those inequities and disparities and those racial disparities and injustices were not naturally occurring. They were created by policy and codified, you know, over and over again in practices like redlining. And so one of the reasons why this is one of the most unequal districts in the country has everything to do with housing policy. And that's why I wanted to serve on the Financial Services Committee, because of the work that we do, you know, certainly on banking and monetary issues, which are directly tied, but everything from redlining and housing and homelessness and student debt, again, which is also, you know, a tie, consumer protection, all of these things. So housing is a fundamental human right, and it is really foundational to the building of healthy communities. And it's also foundational, just quite literally, to our country, which is why I'm so excited that something that I've been fighting for a long time in partnership with advocates happened during this pandemic, and that is in our infrastructure bill for housing to be included in the definition of infrastructure. You know? So ABCD, you continue to be a leader in this space. I'm honored to be able to work alongside you as we celebrate 40 years, and as the theme has been throughout this 40 more years. And it's really why it's so important that, you know, if we want to have those 40 more years of your being rooted in community and your critically important advocacy, that we can't let up. You know, we can't allow this pandemic, and especially given the impact on households and on the most basic needs, including shelter that this pandemic has had, we can't allow that to hinder our ability to mobilize and to do the work of being in pursuit of a fairer, more just, and equitable world. And so, as you all know, this month, our best in the nation eviction moratorium expired. We are all bracing for a looming eviction tsunami. This pandemic has really only laid bare and further exposed and entrenched these inequities. But to be clear, these disparities existed before the global pandemic, but you all know that. And so you were fighting this fight before the pandemic. That fight continues even in a more robust fashion. We have got to continue to fight for affordable housing. Now, look, I know that I'm preaching to the choir, but the reason I do that is because I need the choir to sing that so that people understand that housing is a human right. COVID-19 has made it absolutely clear that housing is also a critical determinant of health. The Massachusetts 7th has been the hardest hit district within our Commonwealth. This is a district that is 53% people of color, 40% foreign born, nearly 40% single female headed households. So not only disproportionately impacted by the economic hardship wrought by this pandemic, but also by higher rates of infection, hospitalization, and death. And that has everything to do with the comorbidities of structural racism and unequal access to healthcare. So we knew that those communities would bear the brunt, low income and historically marginalized communities. And so housing is a critical determinant of health and wellness. It has got to be a part of the conversation about how we make our communities more resilient, how we ensure that we have both a resilient recovery in the midst of this pandemic, but also that we economically recover, and that recovery is one that is equitable. For many residents in the 7th Congressional District, housing was already a stress on their financial well-being. And for too many, their first thought of the day after the stay-at-home order was, how am I going to pay the rent? America's housing market is built upon a foundation of discriminatory policies and practices, from the theft of land, to redlining, to overtaxing households, to predatory lending, all of which has put homeownership out of reach for far too many families, especially Black households. And I cite that because we are in the midst of 3 pandemics: the coronavirus, the economic hardship that it has wrought with unprecedented food insecurity, unemployment, and again, many families on the precipice of eviction, but also the only thing COVID-19 could not kill: systemic and structural racism. And so in this moment of national reckoning, we have to be very pointed in acknowledging, again, the role that policies have played in creating 2 Americas. And because African Americans did not have equal access to the GI Bill, and because of draconian practices like redlining, it has made it harder for Black families to build generational wealth through home ownership. And so now we find Black home ownership at an all-time low, the lowest it's been since the FHA was actually introduced. So according to a study by the Boston Federal Reserve, Black families in Boston have a median net worth of just $8. And again, Black home ownership rates are at a 50-year low as redlining and housing discrimination persist. So I know folks may be tired and are fatigued by these draconian data points, but what's more tiring is the people that are living that. So we have to do something about it. If we want people to live in a healthy, safe, stable environment, we must provide affordable housing, and not just during a pandemic. So now more than ever, we need ABCDC, thank you, Kevin, for your leadership, to do the hard work of empowering disenfranchised communities. Together, we can help families buy their first home and really change the trajectory of their lives. We can make sure every person knows their rights and is empowered to speak up for themselves. And we can help families leverage the assets they do have so they can build the future that their families deserve. ABCD, you get this. And for the last 40 years, you have got it done, and you have stood in the gap, and we thank you. And we are indebted to you. And I pledge my continued partnership with you on this social justice issue, because housing is a human right. Thank you.